ABC News Special Report.
Hey, good morning. For those of you just joining us, I'm Tom Yamas. President Trump has just signed a historic $1.5 trillion tax bill, an important moment not only for the administration, but also the country. This likely will affect everyone's taxes. The president's biggest legislative victory to date, and a promise he campaigned on to overhaul our tax system. And with his signature, this will be the biggest rewrite in a generation of our tax code. Now, Republicans feel this will lead to higher wages and more jobs, but Democrats, they have slammed this bill, calling this a tax cut for the rich and big business. The vast majority of taxpayers will see a lower tax bill, but those cuts could expire by 2025. Now, a feed has just come in from the White House where the president signed the bill inside of the Oval Office. We want to go to that feed right about now.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, have great holidays. We are going to sign some very important things today. One is a continuing resolution that very importantly gives us the right, and we are ordering $4 billion worth of missile defense equipment and missiles themselves. Very important, top of the line, best in the world. We make the best military product in the world. Nobody is even close. So we're ordering $4 billion worth of missile defense, and that will be done by signing right here and also by notifying the Speaker of the House and President of the Senate, designating the missile defense as an emergency defense fund. So it's $4 billion for that and $700 million for various other military forms of equipment. And I'm very honored to be doing that. Our military has been doing a fantastic job in so many ways with ISIS, and everything they're touching lately has been working out. So we're signing that. This is the letter to Mitch McConnell and separately to Paul Ryan, authorizing that having to do with missile defense. Okay. Very important. So that's being done today, and that's going to be sent out. And then when I watched the news, as you know, we had the largest tax cuts in our history just approved. And I was going to wait for a formal signing sometime in early January, but then I watched the news this morning, and they were all saying, will he keep his promise? Will he sign it by Christmas? You were one. But will he sign it by Christmas? And I called downstairs. I said, get it ready. We have to sign it now. We were going to wait till January 7th or 8th and do a big formal ceremony. But every one of the networks was saying, will he keep his promise? Will he sign it for Christmas, before Christmas? And so I immediately called. I said, let's get it ready. As you know, $3.2 trillion in tax cuts for American families, including the doubling of the standard deduction and the doubling of the child tax credit. The typical family of four earning $75,000, we see an income tax cut of more than $2,000. Many much higher than that, slashing their tax bill in half. And they're going to start to see that because we're signing today. They're going to start to see that in February. The numbers will speak. One of the big things that happened, you have some great companies. I want to thank AT&T, who actually was the first out of the box and Boeing and Sinclair and Wells Fargo and Comcast, even though they own NBC, which is not so nice to the presidency or the president. But Comcast also, they all have made tremendous contributions to their employees and tremendous contributions to spending money in this country because of the tax bill. And they all said that it's because of the tax bill. So they're making tremendous investments. That means jobs. It means a lot of things. And we're very happy. So that's AT&T, Boeing, Sinclair, Wells Fargo, Comcast, and now many other companies, as you see. In fact, just this morning, I see 3 more companies came on. A friend of mine, Bob Kraft, called me last night. He said, this tax bill is incredible. He owns the New England Patriots, but he's in the paper business, too. And he said, based on this tax bill, he just wanted to let me know that he's going to buy a big plant in the great state of North Carolina, and he's going to build a tremendous paper mill there, or paper products plant. And I've had many calls such as that, where people that are entrepreneurs, people in business, they're going out and they're going to buy, frankly, factories that are closed, abandoned, and now they're not going to be abandoned any longer. This is having an even bigger impact, faster than I thought. The corporate tax rate, as you know, will be lowered from 35% to 21%. That means that more products will be made in the USA. A lot of things are going to be happening in the USA. We're going to bring back our companies that they've already started coming back. I think they had certain confidence in me. They figured we were going to get this done, but they have already started. Something very important to me, the family farmers and small business owners who lost their business because of the estate tax, most of them won't have any estate tax to pay. It will be a great thing for their families. You can leave your farm to your family. You can leave your business, your small business, to your family, not even so small, because the numbers are pretty big here. So they'll be exempt from having to pay estate tax, which will be tremendous. They'll keep their farms and their businesses in the family. Businesses will be able to deduct 100% of the cost of their capital investments in the year the investment is made. That's called expensing. And to do one-year expensing, I think, is going to be one of the biggest things in the bill, frankly. I think people are going to go out and absolutely go wild over expensing. Bob Kraft mentioned that last night in his telephone call. The fact that they can expense, do one-year expensing, is a fantastic asset. Historic small business tax cuts and pass-throughs now are made really, really good for the business owner. They're hiring people. I see it on television. I'm reading about it all over, where people are hiring a lot of people right now to go to work. The small business tax cut and the pass-throughs are now really incentivizing people. We're going to bring back probably $4 trillion from overseas. Nobody knows the exact number, but it's massive. It'll be over $3 trillion. It could be $5 trillion, but it's a tremendous amount of money that was caught overseas, that the bureaucracy plus the tax laws didn't allow it to reasonably be brought back into our country. So we think at least $4 trillion is going to be brought back. And if you look at that, it's going to be brought back right under the code. This is something that Republicans wanted for years and Democrats wanted for years, and yet it never got done. Who would object to trillions of dollars being brought back into our country? Nobody. But it never got done. Now it's being done. And the bottom line is, this is the biggest tax cuts and reform in the history of our country. This is bigger than actually President Reagan's many years ago. I'm very honored by it. In addition, we have ANWR. We're opening up ANWR for drilling. They've tried to get that for 40 years. They've tried to get that even during the Reagan administration. They could never get it. That alone would be a big bill if that ever happened, but that's even part of this. And we have, of course, the individual mandate, which is a very unfair and very unpopular provision, as you know, in Obamacare. Essentially, I think it ultimately leads to the end of Obamacare. It's essentially, I think Obamacare is over because of that, and we're going to come up with something that's really going to be very good. But the individual mandate was very unfair, because you're basically saying pay for something in order not to have to get health care. So you're paying not to have health care. It was very unfair. Many people thought it should have been overturned in the Supreme Court. Didn't quite make it, almost, but didn't quite make it. But now we're overturning the individual mandate, most unpopular thing in Obamacare. Very, very unfair. So this is the bill right here, and we're very proud of it. It's going to be a tremendous thing for the American people. It's going to be fantastic for the economy. It's going to keep companies from leaving our shores and opening up in other countries. They are very disincentivized to do that. There's not a lot of sense to do that. You do that, and I don't think you're going to be running your company very well. So what's happening is we're going to sign this. This is a little picture of it. It fits nicely in the box. I said take it out of the box because people have to see. And all of this, everything in here, is really tremendous things for businesses, for people, for the middle class, for workers. And I consider this very much a bill for the middle class and a bill for jobs. And jobs are produced through companies and corporations, and you see that happening. Corporations are literally going wild over this, I think even beyond my expectations, so far beyond my expectations. So I'll sign this today rather than having a very big formal ceremony in 2 weeks when we were going to do it, because I didn't want you folks to say that I wasn't keeping my promise. I am keeping my promise. I'm signing it before Christmas. I said that the bill would be on my desk before Christmas, and you are holding me literally to that. So we did a rush job today. It's not fancy, but it's the Oval Office. It's the great Oval Office. And just to conclude, our country is doing very well. We've tremendously cut regulations. Legislative approvals, for which I'm given no credit in the mainstream media. We have, I believe it's 88, which is #1 in the history of our country. Second now is Harry Truman. Harry Truman had more legislative approvals than any other president, and a record long held. And we beat him on legislative approvals, for which I get no credit. A lot of people say he needed this because he has had no legislative approvals. Well, if you look at VA Accountability Act and so many other bills having to do with the VA, having to do with the military, having to do with many things, we have more legislative victories than any other president, not including this, but this is the capper because this is, again, the biggest tax cut, biggest reform of all time. So it's an honor to have you with us, and we will sign this right now. This is something I'm very proud of, great for our country, great for the American people. Thank you all. So we won't do the whole thing, but this is basically what it is. That's your bill. And I want to thank some people in particular that aren't here because, again, we expected a formal ceremony in 2 weeks. But Mitch McConnell has been fantastic, worked so hard. We would speak at 3 in the morning and 2 in the morning, and we would speak whenever we had to speak. But he worked so hard. And the exact same thing can be said for Paul Ryan. They are very proud of this. And we're already seeing the results. And as I said, long ahead of schedule. Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, thank you very much. Orrin Hatch, the chairman, made a beautiful speech the other day in front of the White House. An absolutely brilliant, beautiful speech, and we appreciated it, and I appreciated it. Hardworking. Kevin Brady, I don't think he slept for months. It's almost like that's all he did was this. Mike Enzi, Senator Enzi. Diane Black, Rob Portman, the group of Rob Portman. Rob worked so hard, so knowledgeable on the subject. Pat Toomey, likewise. Tim Scott, likewise. John Thune, likewise. These people work so hard, and I don't know if they're given the proper credit. And the whole Senate, when I say the Senate, unfortunately, the Republicans in the Senate. Democrats don't like tax cuts. They want to raise your taxes. They don't want to lower your taxes. They want to raise your taxes, and they want to spend money foolishly on things that we we don't need in many cases. So we're cutting taxes, we're taking care of our military, and we're taking care of people. And we're really doing a job on jobs. So these folks have been so fantastic that I had to call them in. And plenty of others, believe me, Republicans in the House and Republicans in the Senate have been incredible. So this is what we got. We had it. It was all set to go. As soon as I got back from Christmas, where we'll be working in Florida, I'll be working very hard during that Christmas because we have many things we're talking about, including North Korea, including a lot of things happening in the Middle East, as you know. We've made tremendous strides, obviously, in Syria with ISIS. We've taken back virtually all of the caliphate, all of the land. Same thing in Iraq. And we're making tremendous strides. It's sort of the unwritten story right now. But since my speech on Afghanistan, we're making tremendous progress, tremendous strides. We've opened it up, and it's a whole different world in Afghanistan, I can tell you that. So I'll be working very hard over the holidays. Again, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. I have some beautiful pens over here. And because all of these folks are either continuing to work down the road or getting ready to leave, and I'm sure they'll be working very hard also, I think I'm probably going to hand some of them to the press. Does the media, would any of the media like any of, oh, look at these camera guys. But I think we'll do that. So we have them. Many of you have worked very hard. Many of you have worked very, very fairly, and we really appreciate that. So here you go, folks. You want the box with it or not, huh?
Mr. President, can you talk a little bit about how much you'll travel to sell this tax
I don't think I'm going to have to travel too much to sell it. I think it's selling itself. It's becoming very popular. But I think you'll see something on February 1st when they open up the paycheck. That's when you're going to start to see it, because by signing it now, it kicks in for this year. Remember, if we didn't make a certain date, it wouldn't kick in until next year, meaning the following year, 19, and I wasn't happy with that. So we worked very, very hard to make sure it was this year. Even language originally said the corporate would kick in 19, but we didn't do that. We have it kicking in now, but we had to sign. So I don't think we're going to have to do much selling. I think the corporations that are giving billions and billions of dollars away to their workers, and many more are coming, I think that's really what's selling this, maybe better than anybody could, including myself. But I think come February, when they open their checks and they see, wow, what happened? I have a lot more money in here. I think that's really going to be something very special. So have a great holiday, folks. Some of you folks take, I in particular like the boom holders. They were so nice to me the other day, right? And the cameramen. And the cameramen.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Will they regret it?
I think the Democrats will really regret. The Democrats already regret it. You know, they have their typical thing, it's for the rich. They know that's not true. And they've been called out on it by the media, actually. But the Democrats very much regret it. They wanted to be a part of it, just doesn't work out. But I really do believe, and I said on social media today, I really do believe we're going to have a lot of bipartisan work done. And maybe we start with infrastructure, because I really believe infrastructure can be bipartisan. We've spent $7 trillion in the Middle East, not to mention all of the lives and all of the heartache, and it's so sad. $7 trillion. It's time for us to rebuild our country. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
You would have started with infrastructure at the beginning of this year.
Well, we're going to get infrastructure. Infrastructure is the easiest of all. We're very well on our way. We've essentially repealed Obamacare. You know, the individual mandate is a very big factor in this bill, frankly. A lot of people don't talk about it because the tax cut is so important. But infrastructure is by far the easiest. People want it, Republicans and Democrats. We're going to have tremendous Democrat support on infrastructure, as you know. I could have started with infrastructure. I actually wanted to save the easy one for the one down the road. So we'll be having that done pretty quickly. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Anything in this process that you think will help you?
Thank you.
Did you learn anything in this process that you think will help you?
Yeah, I think I have. You know, one thing I really learned is I learned and got to know and became very friendly with the people in the House, the people in the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats. When I came, you know, I didn't know too many. I was very politically active, but I didn't know too many. I think the fact that I become friends with so many of the names that I just read off and so many of the senators, so many of the congressmen and women, I think that's a huge factor. I can call anybody now. I know every one of them very well. And I understand the legislation very well. So, you know, it's been a process. It's been a great process, really beautiful. But I do believe that the fact that I have gotten to know so many of these people, and many of these people, I have to say, not saying all, but I'm saying many of these people are great people that truly love this country. So I think that helps. And I think you'll see that in this legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We've just been watching maybe one of the most important moments so far in this presidency. President Trump signing that tax bill, the $1.5 trillion tax overhaul, a complete rewrite of our system. A law that will now likely affect every single taxpayer across America. This was moments ago inside the Oval Office. The president says he woke up this morning and said he started to watch the news and he was wondering if he was going to sign this bill before Christmas, as he promised. He says reporters were asking that question. He decided to do this at the last minute and sign this bill. He spoke for about 20 minutes inside the Oval Office, touting how great this bill was, how it was going to cut the taxes for all Americans. Democrats pointing out, of course, this will cut taxes more for the wealthy and for big business than it will from the middle class and lower income families. The president also, in a giving spirit, giving some pens out to his friends in the media who he's had some choice words for throughout the year. But he also said that this new law is very popular. Polls are showing a different story. I want to bring in Mary Bruce, who's at the White House for us this morning. And Mary, you've been tracking all the developments through Congress on this bill and throughout this presidency. And right now, this bill that is now the law, it hasn't been popular with Americans so far.
Yeah, Tom, this bill is deeply unpopular, but Republicans insist that it will be once Americans start to feel the impacts of this bill in their wallet. You heard the president there insist that they're not going to have to go out and sell this bill. He's confident that the results will speak for themselves, but there's no questions that Republicans have a long road to go here as they try to turn this legislative win into a big political win, especially heading into 2018 in those midterms. Not only is the bill unpopular, but it's also predicted to add quite a lot to the deficit, more than $1 trillion. And of course, as you mentioned, experts caution that while Republicans insist the benefits will go to the middle class, it appears from a lot of these analyses that the ultra rich may ultimately benefit most. But Republicans I've talked with, they know they have to get out there and sell this plan. They have to make sure that Americans, as they start to see some of these changes, that they attribute that to Republicans as they try to get a legislative win here. Looking to the weeks and months ahead, some Americans could begin to see some more money in their pockets starting in February, when less money is withheld from their paychecks. But for most of the impacts of this bill, those won't be felt until 2019 when you go to file those 2018 tax returns, Tom.
Mary, something else I noticed, he wanted to make it a point to sort of build bridges with Senator Mitch McConnell and Speaker Paul Ryan. He's had at times a rocky relationship with members of his own party, and it was really rough at the beginning of his presidency earlier this year when he was trying to pass health care reform, yet now taking this victory lap. Clearly, this is a huge legislative victory for Republicans, for the president. This, no doubt, will become an issue and something they'll want to campaign on going into the midterm elections.
Absolutely. Rocky, to say the least. The relationship between the president and Republican leaders up on the Hill has been quite fraught over the first year of this presidency, but no signs of that this week. As you'll recall, just a couple days ago, there was quite a backslapping victory lap here at the White House. The president and Republican leaders all coming together because this is a huge legislative accomplishment, not just for the Trump administration, but for Republican leaders as well. They are now coming together, trying to convince the American people that they have done the right thing here, that this bill will ultimately be good for them. As you mentioned, it affects nearly every single American. Most Americans will get a tax cut here, at least at first, and that is the message that you are going to hear Republicans hammering, both here in Washington and out on the campaign trail heading into those midterm elections.
A major day at the White House and a major day for all of America. All right, Mary Bruce, thank you so much. We will be following this story all day on abcnews.com. And of course, I'll see you later on World News Tonight. And we'll make sure to break down the tax plan, how it affects all Americans, their different classes, the economic classes, and the political fallout, and what the president possibly stands to gain with this tax plan. We now want to return to our regular programming, which for viewers on the West Coast, of course, is Good Morning America. We thank you so much for watching.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hi, everyone. ABC News political director picking it up from my colleague, Rick Klein, picking it up from my colleague, Tom Yamas, over at the broadcast network. And we were going to unpack the president's decision to sign this legislation right before he heads off on vacation. He has now boarded the plane and is en route to Mar-a-Lago, Florida for the Christmas holiday and through the new year. This will be, we believe, the last public comments that we're going to hear from the president of the United States here in 2017. And they were historic comments and they were congratulatory comments, a lot of self-congratulatory comments. I'm joined here by my colleagues, John Parkinson, who covers Capitol Hill for us, and also Tara Palmieri, who is awaiting the president down in Florida. John, I want to start with you because I know you've done a lot of reporting on this. The president is, first of all, calling this the largest tax cut in American history. That's not true. He's also saying that he signed it specifically because the press was calling him out on the timing. That's not quite the situation as we understand it, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think the key thing on when the president was going to sign the bill was really when that continuing resolution was going to get passed, because what it had in there was a pay-go waiver, which it impacted the way that the deficit, the additions to the deficit will be counted against Republicans. So if the deficit that is realized from tax reform had been applied before the next session of Congress is seated, then you would have seen the Office of Management and Budget apply some automatic cuts across the board for other mandatory spending programs. You could have seen $25 billion cut from Medicare. It would have totaled over $100 billion in cuts in this first year. But by getting this waiver, all of that is delayed now to count until 2019. So the president was waiting for that to see if it would get through the Senate, and it did last night. So once the CR came through, it really opened him up to sign the tax bill, too.
Yeah, and the president in a giving mood here around Christmas. And Tara Palmieri, you've been covering every step of this White House over the last year here at ABC News and before that at Politico. How does this change the narrative of this presidency? The president, very proud of this accomplishment. He's talking about it in historic terms, saying he's doing things Reagan couldn't do. He's somehow talking about legislative approvals that even Truman couldn't achieve. How does this change the sense, the White House's own sense of itself?
Well, the president now has something to actually talk about besides deregulation. He has been able to push through tons and tons of executive orders that unwind what his predecessor, President Obama, did, but he really hasn't had a big legislative accomplishment to speak about. But now he has tax reform. The question is, is this bill going to actually be popular with the American people, and will it translate into a political victory? This is not the end of President Trump selling his big tax package. He is going to be on the road, my sources tell me, and he's going to be around the country making sure that Americans know that extra money they get in their paycheck is because of him.
That's interesting, Tara, because he said specifically that he doesn't even think he's going to have to sell this bill, that it's already working beyond his expectations, citing a few companies that are making investments. A phone call he got from his friend, New England Patriots Bob Kraft, owner of the Patriots, Bob Kraft, saying he would invest in a new factory. But, Tara, the White House has to be realistic, and I know there's been some reporting on this in the last 24, 48 hours about what the political prospects are for 2018. They can't expect that the tax bill is going to be their panacea.
Right, and you're seeing that overconfidence that he's saying he doesn't have to sell the bill, but they're very much aware that in 2018 they need to make sure the whole country is behind the Republican Party and that major vote. Now, there's been a lot of goodwill pouring out from the private sector. You saw AT&T, which is right now in a legal dispute over a merger with Time Warner and needing to build goodwill with the federal government, offering their employees $1,000 in bonuses. And obviously this is not just good PR for the company, but it helps them when they're trying to get through this tricky period with the Justice Department. You know, you have Wells Fargo, other major companies saying that they are reinvesting back into their employees and they welcome tax breaks. Who wouldn't welcome this kind of tax break? It's from 35% to 21%. That is a huge amount of money that corporations are going to get back. The question is, will they bring their companies back over to the United States from overseas? I mean, at the end of the day, there are still countries that are more competitive than the 21% rate, and they're really going to have to be dragged back. And is it just going to be a PR campaign where it seems like they're bringing offices back, but they're more satellite offices with just 1 or 2 employees?
It's a good point. It'll take a long time to sort all of that out. And John Parkinson, I want to turn to some of the other elements of this bill. The president made a little passing reference to some of the other things that are in this bill, including the repeal of the Obamacare individual mandate. He says it's essentially repealing Obamacare. What's the reality around that, and what's the expected impact of the fact that that's included in this bill?
Well, yesterday Nancy Pelosi told us that she didn't really agree with that assessment. She said that it's going to do great damage to Obamacare, but that it's not a full repeal. I think that that's an accurate assessment, that it's not a full repeal. Clearly, they're not replacing it at this stage. That's still a debate that they're going to kick to next year. But really, if you look back over the debate during the Obama administration, they were talking, about the individual mandate and how critical it was to make sure that there was funding for the Obamacare, cost sharing reduction payments, and just so that it was able to survive, and so that it was able to be a viable piece of policy. So I think that having the healthcare debate largely in 2017 and over, despite some calls from some Republicans, and now we have tax reform out of the way. You talked about infrastructure earlier, and the president really does have to look for bipartisan opportunities in the Senate, because now he's not going to be able to pass things underneath reconciliation, really. He's going to be looking for 60 votes. He's always going to need 8 or 9 Democrats to join him. And so I think really looking for infrastructure, that's the low-hanging fruit that they're going to try to tackle first off. And, of course, it was just a little more than a week ago that Democrats went and stole essentially a Senate seat down in Alabama. They'll be cutting the Republican margin to 51-49 going forward. And Tara, I want to ask you a little bit, looking forward and playing off of what John was saying about infrastructure. The president seemed pretty bullish on the prospects for bipartisanship in the new year, saying he expects that Democrats will work with him on infrastructure. That's easy by comparison. He also said that Democrats are already regretting the fact that they didn't play along on taxes, and that this bill was entirely partisan. 0 Democrats in either the House or the Senate voting for it at any stage of the legislation. Tara, what's your take on whether the 2018 is going to bring a fresh wave of bipartisanship to Washington?
Well, I think President Trump is probably making the right steps to try to turn over a new page, saying, I'm going to work with Democrats. And frankly, infrastructure is very popular with Democrats. I've spoken with some lawmakers from New York and New Jersey, and they are very interested. They have some pet projects that they wouldn't mind making it into that bill. And if that means they have to quietly vote in favor of a Republican bill, I could see a lot of them going on with that. And so, Trump is a Republican in a lot of ways, but in some ways he's less traditional. And I think in terms of infrastructure and putting money back into our roads and our bridges and our subways and our trains, that's something that a lot of Democrats can buy into. Now, the problem is, has he burnt all of that goodwill with all of these angry tweets and these feisty comments, or can he really rebuild those bridges with his, real estate investor salesmanship?
And Tara, I know you're not seeing these pictures right now, but Air Force One is taking off on the screen, and he's headed your way. So be ready in just a couple hours' time to take the baton over from the Washington troops. John Parkinson, though, I want to get back to you on the issue of bipartisanship. Is there any sense in talking to Democrats on the Hill, do they have buyer's remorse in not playing along on this bill? Are they worried about the political impact if this becomes very popular?
Rick, I can't really quite hear you through the IFB. I think I lost IFB, but if you want to toss that question maybe to Tara.
Sure, yeah, we can send it back to Tara. Do you get a sense that Democrats wish they had been playing along when it comes to this tax bill?
Specifically, and I noticed that President Trump didn't mention any names, so he's maybe speaking about general Democrats. He didn't say anyone. He didn't mention the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. So it's unclear who he's talking about. This might be his gut again, but if it turns out to be a popular bill and it does build the economy, they're going to want to say that they had something to do with it. But then again, all of those Republicans who took pictures at the White House with President Trump rallying the bill, if it becomes unpopular, a lot of them are going to distance themselves from this bill.
And Tara, talk to us about the next couple of days. What are we expecting from the White House at Mar-a-Lago? This, of course, is his first Christmas as President of the United States. He's down there in his Florida resort. We know that sometimes he's been interacting with other members of the club. Are we expecting to see him much, hear anything from the President over the next week?
Well, we can surely expect that he'll be tweeting, of course. He's staying here until after the new year. He's got a big New Year's Eve bash on his schedule, but not really anything much more than golfing. And of course, President Trump always calls it a working vacation. And he does have some things to deal with. Like he mentioned that North Korea this morning put out a statement saying that the United States national security strategy towards their country is criminal. So I assume that he's going to be on the phone today with some of his counterparts in Asia and his national security team in the U.S. The world keeps moving, even though we celebrate our holidays here in the U.S. and the president is still the president. He brought down his staff secretary, Rob Porter, with him. He's on the plane. And the reason that you bring your staff secretary is if you have to sign any documents or bills, you want that person there to be witness to it. And that's actually part of the White House protocol. So you can expect some pen to paper over the next 10 or 12 days.
And speaking of pens, I was struck by the fact that he was handing out these pens to members of the press and the pool that was in the Oval Office. Not sure exactly who accepted these pens, or where usually they go around to other lawmakers who are part of the signing process. He went out of his way to say that he was kind of pressured into signing this as quickly as he did. What's your sense of the presidential mood as he heads off for a year-ending vacation?
I think that he was jubilant and he was happy to have something to sign on his desk, something that went through Congress that had approval. But at the end of the day, usually you would sign this kind of bill surrounded by fellow lawmakers, but they all left last night. As we know, they passed their budget and their temporary budget, and they're on their way home. So he really didn't have many people to spend the time with. It is interesting to see him passing out pens to the press, but that's typically what the president does after he signs. He hands the pens out to supporters of the bill. He thanked a lot of his staff for their hard work. I know this has been their #1 agenda. Tax reform is one of the things that President Trump really thought was a main priority, and it was even more so important than healthcare reform. Talking to aides and lawmakers, they all say that he really learned every nitty-gritty piece of this bill, as opposed to the healthcare bill, which he just wanted fixed and dealt with by the Congress. And you see the difference when he actually commits to the details, and he was obviously celebratory. He also made that big promise that he would sign the bill before Christmas as a Christmas present to Americans. So there was a bit of a rush, a little hesitation. Could he actually sign it legally? And he was able to do it. I'm sure there are still other documents that he still has to sign associated with the bill. That's what I've been told from an aide. But the main chunk of the bill has been signed today.
And a major legislative achievement for President Trump as he wraps up the year. All right, John Parkinson and Tara Palmieri, thanks for being with us. And Tara, good luck down there covering the winter White House over the next week or so. That does it for ABC News Digital. I'm ABC News Political Director Rick Klein. We'll catch you next time.